Welcome to the world of editing, an intensive, powerful, creative, exhilarating part of filmmaking. It is at this stage that the film takes shape, develops a form. It is also a process that reveals as much about the subject as it does about the filmmaker. So, let us see how editing brings ideas and a story to images, gives them a mood, a poetic lyricism. It's all about storytelling. For documentaries, the editor often plays the role of a second director. Since editing is a long and tedious process, an editor needs to be patient and organized. Add to it the experimental trait that will contribute to the director's inputs and a diplomatic nature that patiently allows the director to play around with alternatives.
Editing has many phases, each demanding a different kind of attention to detail. This requirement is an intrinsic part of editing. In terms of the technical and conceptual quality of a film, it never pays to rush through any stage of an edit, because a variety of important decisions are taken at this stage, which is possible only if the preparatory foundation is strong.
Naturally, the first task is to preview the tapes. Ideally, one assistant should log the tapes while the director simultaneously views them and gives his or her comments as well. If this is not possible, first view the tapes and make some notes about how you want to tell the story. Then follow the drill.
Step by step, the entire location footage must be previewed and logged for conceptual and technical details. Locations, important actions, names of people, the type of shots. A good log sheet would look something like this. Neat, bold, with markings that make tracking information about the shots and interviews much easier during the actual editing.
All interviews and statements must be transcribed and, where necessary, translated. Stick to the patient attention to detail at this point. It's a lot of paperwork, but it will save a lot of stress and time later. The log sheets, transcripts, translations are now the foundation for the paper edit. How will the purpose of the film be revealed? What is the span of time and space the film needs to cover? What is the pace and style of the film?
Yes, but I want to say it in the dictionary.
Without log sheets in hand, it can be harrowing to roll back and forth in search of answers. Answers which can be found with greater clarity by shuffling papers instead of footage. The rough segmentation can be done once the finer points of all the log sheets and transcripts have been reviewed. Some filmmakers like to Xerox the entire paperwork so that sections can be marked, cut, and put in the order required. It is only now that actual editing can begin, when shots will be combined and time condensed to construct a story. The pace of a film is a critical element and difficult to define. It is achieved through a combination of action taking place within the frame. The camera movement given to an image. and the manner in which various images are cut and put together. In what is termed a well-balanced video, the pace can never be static. The style of a film is all about matching the right pace for the right sequence and putting them into an order that appeals to the viewer. A never-ending slow pace would make viewing a boring and dull experience. A continuously rapid pace would make it tiring for the viewer. Sequences, with their accompanying content and intent, demand their own pace. For instance, deep thoughts, emotions, hard work need a slow pace. Thrill, excitement, suspense demand a fast tempo.
In 1970, torrential rains lashed the region. The Alaknanda River was clogged. It rose 60 feet and burst its banks. Water inundated 100 square kilometers of land. Silt and sparking boulders rolled down in a flood of terror. 6 metal bridges broke. 10 kilometers of roads were washed away. Villages were wiped out forever. Hundreds drowned.
Each filmmaker follows a personal methodology, but by and large, there are 2 ways to go ahead. Edit sequences in line with the narrative, or edit loose sequences of various segments and locations separately, then put them in the order of the story.
Earlier, tape editing was linear. A change at shot 20 or 30 meant a re-edit or losing a generation, and thereby quality. Today, computer-based editing systems offer immense flexibility. Non-linear editing on computers offers the ease of a word program. Cut, copy, paste to move shots and sequences around. But this facility does not diminish the importance of editing techniques or the editor.
As sequencing begins, the focus is on the basics. Editing is a process of presenting the visual and oral evidence for a story. For the evidence to have the proper impact, each scene in every sequence must have space for the image to speak for itself, the image to convey symbolic meanings, effects, music, and words to be woven in.
This complex requirement has to be fulfilled creatively within the context of cinematic grammar. Film has a language.
In every segment, the cuts and how they are placed is the bottom line. It is not only the content of shots that have meaning, but the sequence in which they are put that convey a message. Let's take a simple example.
There are 3 shots: a laughing child, a crying child, a lion. By merely rearranging the sequence of shots, the message changes. A happy child started crying after seeing the lion, or a sad child became amused after seeing the lion. The dramatic elements of cuts have many established cinematic trends that are meant to ensure comfort levels for the viewer, situate the scene, juxtapose shots and scenes for peaking interest levels, keep space for narration and music.
The duration of shots and their matching eye level create comfort levels for the viewer. The exact nuances in seconds and frames vary with the times and the personal choices of the filmmaker. Yet, the basics remain the same.
Long shots must stay longer than a mid shot. Mids longer than a close-up. These durations differ depending upon the amount of information in an image, the viewer's familiarity with the information, the type of action, and the composition.
A viewer enjoys the here and now of a story, for which the subject in the images where the people or action needs to be situated. It enables the viewer to know where the action is taking place and maintain a reference point of the off-screen elements even while looking at a close-up or mid-shot.
This spanning long shot reveals a group of women interacting with health workers. The overview is retained as a mental map, while other shots establish closer details of the scene. A close shot may be the dramatic opening for a scene. Even so, the scene has to be situated in the location soon enough.
A film that is not static will have constantly peaking levels of interest. Juxtaposition of shots, scenes and sequences is the key editing element for piquing viewer interest.
It can be achieved by playing with the pace. It can also be achieved by evoking contrary responses with visibly contrasting images.
The overall impact of the editing style is also closely linked to the quality of narration and the relief factor of music. The spacing for this factor has to be calculated during the editing. A narration that begins right on a cut, exactly when the action begins, is annoying for the viewer. The ear takes a little longer to adjust than the eye. So the image must give space to allow the ear to start listening after the image has been registered.
Even changing conventions of editing allow for basics to be in position. Make personal choices, but after seeing what works best. See the cuts on these pans. This seems like it will never begin to pan. The next cut is right on the movement. This stays just a little before the pan. The same applies to zooms and tilts.
The peaking levels of interest also need to be supported with dramatic delivery of visual information. This needs to be done within and between sequences. Cut-ins and cutaways are used within sequences. Often it is just a predictable follow-up.
ये चीता ऊपर चढ़ा था, उसको देख के मैं देख रहा हूँ यहाँ से चीता जो है.
Like in this case, an obvious cut-in leads us further into the scene.
बहुत डर लगा. ये माला सब खत्म हो गया, कहाँ तो फेंक दिए.
Similarly, a cutaway brings relief to a lengthy scene. Technically too, cut-ins and cutaways play an important role. An editor will never forgive a cameraman who has not brought back intercuts for each scene, because not only does it seriously impact the pace of the sequence, it cramps the style of storytelling. Intercuts are the filmmaker's safety shots to cover gaps in continuity and bridge the passage of time.
But it is possible to use cut-ins and cutaways more productively for a tantalizing effect. Apart from performing their primary function of visually breaking a sequence, cut-ins and cutaways can create suspense by withholding immediate information about the main action, imply the result of an action that is not seen, build an ambience of the overall environment of the sequence. By achieving these effects, cut-ins and cutaways can guide responses to the action, retain interest in the action when they are slow to complete,
Between sequences, fades, dissolves, and wipes perform similar functions to transit time, location, action, while retaining viewer interest by virtue of the visual change. Transitions, especially dissolves, often serve another important purpose. They offer the space for the narration to lead into a new concept or reveal a new idea.
By the time you reach the end of the rough cut of the film, mental and cinematic fatigue is bound to set in. This is a good time for a break. The material can now be shared with the narration writer and with friends. Some feedback at this stage will enable modifications to the storytelling, whether it is to tighten, extend, or add sequences, or fill important conceptual gaps through the narration.
The inherent editing style should guide the viewer through the storyline. Hopefully, the pace of editing and narration transpose each image and sequence onto a parallel level of thought and understanding.
Do you have like some live shots?
Narration, then, has an entire gamut of possibilities. It can enhance all these processes and carry the story to its fullest potential with suggestion, implication, direct information, and supplementary conceptual thoughts that visuals cannot provide.
A film develops step by step within this complex backdrop. We have seen how important it is to maintain attention to detail, editing moves into the next mode. Each shot in each segment must have the right aural feel and correct audio level. Music, sound effects, interviews, the narration, all tracks are laid with an audio ratio in reference to each other and the picture.
In the era of non-linear editing, audio work is at one's fingertips, that is, with the click of a mouse. It is worth the effort to master and enjoy this process, which adds layers of significance to a film. The other task of titling and subtitling is also much easier with non-linear systems.
There is a wide spectrum of choices, but don't be led away or overawed by them. Essentially, text on the screen must be straight, bold and clear, so that the viewer understands the content, not feel the strain to read. For the same reason, translated subtitles should be concise and move in harmony with the cuts. So, the tracks are mixed, the titles are in position. This is usually the last chance to make any major change before a submission. View the film in absolute privacy with no disturbance. All the prescribed protocols for color bar, black, clock, logo should be finalized at this point. When going for a tape transfer, use options like broadcast rendering that most non-linear systems now offer.
Alas, once the print to tape is done, the task list is still not over. How you submit your tape has a critical impact on how it is viewed. All necessary details must be clearly stated on the tape cover and in supporting annexures.
The annexures should include a longer and shorter version of the synopsis, details of the production team, transcript of the narration, visual and audio reference sheets of the film with time codes, and any other specific requirements.
So, here we are, the end. Certainly time for a break before you are ready to view the next video in the series.